Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephanie Griffin, and I'm the Executive Director of ACMP, Associated Chamber Music Players. And I'm very happy today to introduce you to three ACMP members who have been on the cutting edge of exploring the software JamKazam, which allows you to play chamber music together in real time over the internet. Very amazing stuff. So Susan Alexander, Mike Garrahan, and Val Matthews. I'm going to turn the floor over to them, and feel free, as I said earlier, to raise your hand or put a question in the chat, and we'll answer questions throughout the presentation.
Okay, well, I think I will start. Hello, everyone. So we're going to be tag teaming a bit with various people sharing screens at the appropriate time, and hopefully that will work. And as Stephanie said, please ask questions as we go along, because we don't want to move from something until people understand it. First, I'm curious, we can have practice using the reactions button by just seeing how many people have already used JamKazam. Can we like get a sense of that from this? I don't know if we can. I've been in meetings where you could tell that.
Yeah, we're seeing some thumbs up and some applause.
Yeah. Okay, so for those of you who have already used it, this might be a chance to get some questions answered that have always puzzled you. But for those of you who haven't used it before, we're going to try to get you familiar enough with it that you'll feel like you can do it on your own. So we're going to start by Stephanie bringing up the help pages that I think are a very good place for people to start when they're experimenting with JamKazam. And so, see, this is very good. This URL, this is the place to go. And if we just scroll down a little bit on this page, can we do that? I can't do it, so there are just a few things here I'd like to let people know about. Once you are experienced at JamKazam and you wish to find other people to play with, there's a directory here that you can get listed in, and you can also put something in your ACMP profile to let people know that you're able to play online. Say JamKazam if you can use JamKazam. So there are instructions here on how to join the directory, and then if we scroll down a little farther, you can get to the directory, and there are about 50 people in this directory now. And then just scrolling down a little bit farther, I just want you to see that we have covered a number of different topics in the help pages. And so the things that we're going to talk about today, you'll see that there are written versions of these instructions, on these pages that will correspond to the things that Val is going to show you when we do the demo. So now if we click on FAQ, basic here, yep, I want to talk about some of those things. So yes, people are skeptical because they have used Zoom or they've used other applications where you really can't do things at the same time. But the answer here is yes, you really can. And rather than watching that string quartet in action, Mike is going to show you a little video of our quartet, the Carnac Quartet. We played in the first JamKazam live streamed classical festival, which was a lot of fun, and so some of this video is captured. For those of you who might have watched that live, there were some issues with the syncing up of the video and the audio, which really don't have to do with JamKazam. It has to do with the way that things are being broadcast. So if you saw that and thought, oh, that's no good, that's going to happen in my session, it's really quite a different kind of a different animal. And so what you hear in the video that Mike is going to play is what we heard when we were sitting there in our separate houses playing together. This is what we heard over our headphones. So anyone else want to say anything about that before we play it?
Go ahead and play it, and then we can say some things.
Okay, good. This is some of the 4A, second movement, right, of the 4A.
That's right.
Number one.
Okay, here we go.
So, let's see. Oh, oh, no, good.
You're still on. Yeah.
I'm
We have
still-
a question in the chat from Michelle.
Yes.
Michelle, would you like to ask your question?
I was just curious if you were able to record the video as well as the audio using JamKazam.
So we did not record this video, right, Mike? This was from.
That was captured. I downloaded the video from YouTube and edited it to bring the audio back in sync with the video.
Yeah,
We should probably say a couple of things about the video. One is we can't use the video to see each other. That takes up too much bandwidth and is never exactly in sync, so it's not useful for playing. We developed a lot of listening skills so we could play without seeing each other. The second thing is that when JamKazam is used for a broadcast, as it was in the festival, which you can see the recording of on YouTube, in that case, the audio is actually delayed. There's a video camera on each of us, and then it's synthesized on a server somewhere, and the audio is actually delayed so that it matches, so that it appears to sync up with the video. And that is what failed during the festival. If you watch the festival video, it was in sync at the beginning and then got progressively worse and worse. It's pretty humorous. I love the moment where there's this, we're hearing this beautiful clarinet melody and the clarinetist is blowing spit out of his instrument at the same time. So. So I think the broadcast leaves something to be desired. If you saw the Jamulus presentation last week, is kind of similar in principle, except that what I learned from that session is that they use Zoom to capture the videos separately, whereas JamKazam has it built in.
Yeah. So.
So Joe Wilson just asked, Joe, if you want to ask your question.
Yeah, so what you're saying is you captured the video and streamed it to YouTube. Is that what you did, rather than using the video feature of JamKazam?
No, actually, there's a special thing in JamKazam, which is a kind of a broadcast mode. And for broadcasting, you need an extra person who is not playing. And so what happens is we do have the video, JamKazam video on, but we send the video streams and the audio streams to the broadcaster, and they send that to YouTube. And that decreases the amount of data that has to be sent around because the way that JamKazam usually works is that we would be sending all of that to each other, and that's why people usually don't use video, because that's a, kind of a waste to be sending video to each other. But we were just sending video to this fifth person who was doing the broadcast.
We have a couple more questions about from the chat. Mike, actually, no, Joe Henderson first. Joe, would you like to ask your question? If not, I can ask it for you.
I think we can read the questions from the chat.
Okay, so Joe Henderson is asking, this is a Susan question, how do pianists handle being able to talk with your mic pointed at the piano?
Yeah, well, you can have another mic. You can have a chat mic. That's a thing that JamKazam lets you do. I don't know if you've a person who has already tried to use JamKazam, but when you're registering your gear, you can have an extra mic that's just for chat. And then within JamKazam, you can set the levels of the chat microphone separately from the audio stream. The way that I mic my piano, I actually have one mic that's pointed inside the piano and one mic that is behind the piano, like behind me. And I can talk into that one. So yeah, it does depend what your setup is for miking the piano, but you can have a chat microphone.
And before Susan had that set up, what were you? You were just kind of leaning into the mic when you had to talk.
Yeah, I would stand up.
And that was awkward.
It was awkward, but there were some people that I play with who couldn't hear me if I did that. So for them, I actually used my iPhone, which is what I'm using as a mic right now for this Zoom session. So it can be a USB mic, and I just use that as the chat mic. Most of us have one of these. It works fine for that kind of a thing, where you don't have to worry about the latency very much.
So both Mike Tietz and Tom Frankel are curious about how far away you were and what was your latency in milliseconds for that performance.
So we're all four of us are in the greater Washington, D.C. area. And I think the farthest distance is between myself and Mike, which is about 40 miles as the crow flies. Susan plays routinely with people who are farther away, though. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I play every week with some people in Nashville, which is like 600 miles away. And we really don't have perceptible latency. I mean, we all have reasonably good setups. So it's really doable, but you do want to get, if you're going to play with people who are far away, you want your setup to be 10 milliseconds or less probably, and theirs too. And then, the farther away people are, the more additional internet latency will be added.
Oh, and then our typical latency is under 30 milliseconds.
And
Yeah.
That's for round trip, overall delay?
I think that's an estimate of how long it is between when you play the note and your partner hears it.
Okay.
So one-way network and passing through the computer at each end.
Okay, thanks.
When I play with the Tennessee people, it's usually in the high 30s probably, but it's still totally, we don't really notice it very much.
Yeah, for the foursome that was in the video I just showed, our typical latencies between the string players are just under 20 milliseconds, and to Susan, it's more like 25.
Yeah, I had different gear back then too. That was with my I was on borrowed gear. Now I have an interface that has a very good driver for Mac, and now it's a bit better.
We're getting questions about gear. Well, Meg Hill has another question about video. Do we want to let Meg answer that question? And then we can talk about our gear a little bit because we've got some questions on that.
Yes, thank you. So I have been thinking about, along with my daughter, Charlotte, who's on this session, about using this in our chamber music program for students in the summer. And such an important thing that we are teaching in chamber music, of course, is eye contact, or which you can't have, but at least is seeing, watching bow speed, watching breath. So the video thing is what is so attractive to us. unlike Jamulus, which is just sound. So I guess my question is, I mean, I could see splitting this screen or something, so you could see your music and seeing the people that you're playing with. But if I understand correctly, Susan, you were saying that the it increases the data so much to have the video that you just don't use the video.
Yeah, basically.
So,
Yeah.
so just one more question about that. So what is the advantage then of this over Jamulus, for instance?
They have a different communication architecture. Jamulus, everybody connects to a server, and in JamKazam, it's directly peer-to-peer. So it's a trade-off. Jamulus scales up better to larger groups. JamKazam, you get a little lower latency from player to player.
Understood. Understood. And do you think, just before I leave this, because this is a crucial question for us in terms of whether we want to even try to implement it with our program, have you tried it with the video and so you can see each other, and you've just said it's a nothing burger, it doesn't work?
It works, but it's not that helpful.
Yeah, it's not in sync.
So it doesn't work.
Well, I mean, if you want to see each other's faces to say hi, it works for that purpose.
Yeah, but it doesn't work to play chamber music, looking at each other, taking each other's cues, watching each other's bow speed.
For coordinating an ensemble, your ears are your best tool.
Gotcha. Okay,
Right.
thank you
Now,
so much.
that being said, one of the differences between, well, one of the fundamental differences between JamKazam and Jamulus is that JamKazam is a commercial operation. They have started charging a monthly fee for its use, but they're also, their design center is, they conceive it as a way for working bands to do concerts online and get revenue. And so there's some features in there for that we don't use. But there is also a teacher mode, and I don't know anything about it, but it's advertised as a feature. I think it's for one-on-one teaching, and I don't know exactly what advantages that has, but possibly it does a better job with video. So you can look into that.
I'm seeing a request in the chat that we get on with the main part of the program and set the questions aside for a while.
Okay, so why don't we do that? But perhaps before we do, there's two questions that relate to this topic, and then maybe we should just hold questions till the end. So we were, Janet Hoffman, you had a question about the audio and video?
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. Yeah, I just have to, I'm listening to what you're saying, and I have to say that I've been doing a lot of JamKazam playing with people all over, been very successful playing with people audio and video. From California, I play with somebody from Lexington, Kentucky, almost every day, another flute player, perfectly in sync, in tune, audio, video. And I think that what people need to consider, I think what people that are coming on this right now are people that are looking forward to playing with other people in real time. A lot of people that have signed on to this specifically want to play music. They're not so much, I could be wrong, but I think people that I've sent out the information to, because I run chamber music workshops, people who want to play with each other. They want to know that there's the efficacy of playing with people online. And yes, it is very possible, and you can use audio and you can use video. And yes, you have to make sure your latency is correct, that your Focusrite interfaces are connected correctly, and there's always issues. But to say that the video on JamKazam working together doesn't work, that's not true, it does. If you're going to do what the quartet just did, you're going to audio, video, and do it as a performance, that might be a different thing. But I know that when we're on three, or we're duet or trio or quartet, we can see each other, we play in sync, and it's a vital tool. And I'm a big proponent of JamKazam. I like Jamulus also. With that, you don't have the video, but again, as somebody just mentioned, I forgot who, the gentleman, I believe it was you, that your best tool is your ears. Of course, it's your best tool, but a lot of people still want the visual to see in the sync. So that's all I have to say. I just wanted to bring that up because I think there might be people that are sitting here that are confused and saying, but I want to be able to see people when I play, and yes, you can. That's all I have to say, Steph.
Excellent. So
thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that.
I see that there's other questions, but let's go ahead with the presentation, and then after we show some of the basics of setup and stuff, and I will take all the questions in the chat.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go back to the frequently asked questions and just see if there's anything else that we want to address on that page before we show you how you would set it up. Okay. So yes, how many people can play at once? 6 to 8. That seems to be the best. And as Mike said, if you have a lot of people, then Jamulus is a better choice. Yep, does it cost anything? There was a free version, but now there's tiered pricing, and you know, people who are playing chamber music a lot, if you're having sessions more than an hour long, you know, you're going to need to pay for something. But of course, ACMP has got in front of this and has these half-price annual plans, gold plans, which is a good plan to have. So if you decide you want to do this, you can write to Stephanie, and she will get you one of these for $50 for the year, which is a bargain, I think.
Someone
Okay.
asked about the price, but I think the gold is normally $10 a month, and
Yeah.
through ACMP you get it for $5. Silver is capped at 10 hours a month, so like Susan said, if you do a lot of playing, silver is not sufficient. It also doesn't have the same audio quality.
And
You can sign up for gold for a free month if you want to try it out.
yeah, I think if you are a new person on JamKazam, it'll give you platinum for a month. But platinum, you really don't. No one really needs that except people who want to make money teaching on JamKazam. So latency, just to say, you know, this is our special computer science word for basically delay. You know, how long does it take for the thing that you did to actually have an effect in audio or video. And then because of latency, you know, we have these issues. The farther away people are from you, the greater the latency will be. There's latency, I mean, even in a room, you know, for every foot distance that you are from someone, it takes a millisecond for the sound to get to you. Am I getting that right? I think
Yes.
So we know about latency because we experience it all the time, and if it's low enough, our brains don't really care about it. But if it starts getting above, say, 40 milliseconds, you start to notice it, and then you have to do specific things to play in spite of it. And at a certain point, you know, it won't be worth it. But because of latency, we don't want to do anything to introduce more latency than we're going to have, just because of being far away from each other. And so for that reason, we don't like to use anything that's wireless in our setups. And so that means wired headphones, wired microphones.
Wired Ethernet.
Wired Ethernet, that's right. So you don't want to use your Wi-Fi. You want to be connected directly to the internet, because all of those things will introduce some delays into your setup.
Delays and irregularity, because over a wireless connection, the packets don't always travel at a constant rate, and that's really the issue, is distortion from that.
And there's a thing if you get into JamKazam, there's this thing called jitter, which is kind of that unreliability of things. And
It's a fluctuation in latency.
Yeah, I want to keep that down. And I also wanted to just address USB mics for a second while we're here. People have asked me about them. They also introduce latency, so they're not recommended if you're going to be playing with people who are at any distance from you. They're going to, just add another 10 milliseconds or more into your setup, so they're not the best. But if you're playing with people who are close by and you just have one lying around and you want to try it, it will work, but it might just be slower. Okay, and let's just go down now to what you'll need. So we've been through some of that stuff. Here, this tells you the kinds of computers. Depending upon whether you have a Windows machine or a Mac, your experience is going to be different. I have a Mac. Mike and Val have Windows machines. And so we found various, slightly different things to work better for us because of that. All right, let's scroll down a little bit more. So we've talked about all those things, microphones. Yeah. So one thing we wanted to talk about is if you don't have a microphone, you can make this work just using the microphone that's in your computer. And it works on both Windows and Mac. Mac works quite well because the inside of Mac there's this thing called Core Audio, which is like the internal audio interface, and it's quite fast. So you can make that work. And there are instructions farther down.
Whereas by and large, the Windows machines tend to, the audio built into Windows machines tend to introduce a lot more latency than the built-in audio on the Mac. Which,
Yeah.
And if you were at the Jamulus presentation last week, basically all this is the same. The basic fundamental hardware requirements are the same for both systems.
Yeah. Let's just keep scrolling down a little bit more. But there is a section, if you have a Mac and you want to do the built-in microphone thing, I put some instructions here just recently. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how you would get started doing this. First of all, you would go to the JamKazam.
Yeah, did you want to talk about external gear though? I mean, we didn't really, for those
audio.
that are new to this technology, is that it's certainly worth giving it a try with your built-in audio if you don't have external audio gear for your computer. The latency may be high, but at least it'll give you a little sense of what the experience is like. I think maybe we all started that way and then wound up throwing in the towel and getting external gear, but I play with someone who still uses a Windows PC with a built-in mic and headphones. So there is on the in the Jamulus, I'm sorry, the JamKazam forum, there's a running list of audio interfaces that people have tried. So if the built-in audio is introducing too much latency, then what you need is an external box that plugs into generally your USB port. A lot of people use this Focusrite. It's a little red box. I've got the Focusrite Solo. A lot of people have the 2i2, which is the next model up and it accommodates 2 microphones. But the other thing to consider is that ACMP members get a discount on gear through Sweetwater Sound, and we have an assigned sales engineer who can talk to you and he can make recommendations as well. I got this recommendation from friends, but the Focusrite, the Solo model is well, it's like $120, I think, somewhere in there.
Yeah, and so Focusrite does have a driver, a low latency driver for Mac, so that's good. I have a Motu interface that I like. It has a very good latency with Mac. So on the JamKazam, there are articles on the JamKazam help pages.
They have a forum site, yeah.
Yeah, but now they have, well, when we go. If we go to the, I'll show you later kind of where some of this, some of the documentation is that JamKazam is.
And then whatever interface you get, it does require a microphone to be plugged into it, and so.
Yeah, and for the demo that Val is going to do, we're going to show you what it's like with interface and microphones plugged into your interface and headphones plugged into your interface and all that sort of stuff. I saw someone ask the question, can you plug earbuds into your computer? And the answer to that is yes, you can do that. Yeah. Okay, so are we ready to show the step-by-step?
Yeah, I don't know. We're not going to do, I don't think we're going to do soup to nuts here, but just to give you an idea of what the interface looks like when you're running it. Let me first of all show a couple of things. This is the JamKazam application. It is an application that you have to download and install. This is the JamKazam website, and it looks just like the application. And people are often confused by this. They've gone to the website and then they ask why they can't configure their gear or create a session with people. The answer is it's because you're on the website. You didn't actually download the app and install it. So don't get thrown by that little detail. Clearly, they use the same code to do the user interface for both. So this is the actual application running. The first thing you need to do before you can start playing together is to configure your gear. This user interface is probably due for an overhaul because there's stuff all over the place and it's a moving target. But this is one of the first places you'll set up an account. So you can give yourself a name, you can say what instruments you play. You can even put a little description so that if other musicians are looking for you, they know what your interests are. But I'll go to audio gear since this is really the first technical step of the setup. I have configured it in the past for my built-in audio, but if I've just bought a new Focusrite audio interface, then I wanted to add new gear. There's a video online that this will take you to that may or may not be useful. It's worth watching once, I think. But this is the guts of it here. So it's scanning your computer for all the audio gear that's there. So you should, when you choose your audio input device, you should see the one that you just plugged in. I've got a couple of different things plugged in here. So I'll select the Focusrite. As I think Mike Teets mentioned in the comments, it does come with its own audio driver for Windows as well as for Mac. So when you get the device, you want to install whatever software came with it before you go and start using it with JamKazam or anything else. And it's going to run a little test. The audio output, I'm going to put same as input because I'm going to take my earbuds and plug them into the output port of that audio interface.
Excuse me, Val, there's been a request. Can you possibly make it a little larger to see?
I'll try, yeah. Well, that kind of messes up the interface, but it makes the text a little larger. I can blow up the whole window too. All right, let me get that back the way it was. Okay, I hope that's a little better. Okay. It's going to run a little test on your gear to show you what the latency is inherent in your hardware. If you're configuring your built-in hardware on Windows or Mac, the same thing will happen. You'll get a little display that shows you what the latency is. You typically want to match the default sample rate of the device. You can adjust the frame size, but I think they've now set the defaults so that they work well for the Focusrite devices because the Focusrite devices are getting so popular. And if you need to tweak whatever type of interface you're using, it's got this driver component called ASIO, which stands for, I don't know, audio something input output. And every ASIO driver has a slightly different control panel. This is the one that's specific to the Focusrite, so yours may look different. But yeah, if you need to go in and configure advanced settings, there is a way to get into that settings menu, which I won't get into here because it's device specific. And I will mention, I forget whether we mentioned, but there are a number of us volunteer on the ACMP Technology Task Force. So if you need, if stuff isn't working for you the first time, then you can contact somebody on the task force and we can try to help out. And once that device is configured, you go to the next screen. It's asking you, it must have remembered, I played cello from the last time I configured this, but you can update it. You can specify the instrument. You have a wide range of selections here. Probably not everything Mike Teets plays, but I think most of the instruments that we play are on here. We'll go ahead and close. And we should now be done. Oh, and this is where you configure, if you have a separate microphone, as Susan mentioned, for voice chat, you can configure it here. I don't use a separate microphone for chat, so I'm going to leave it at the default here. And you can click that. I don't think you'll be able to hear it because I didn't share my sound, but you can play through your headphones to make sure you're hearing.
And you should do that step to be sure.
Yeah.
Because some people skip it or don't skip it.
And now my Focusrite device is configured and it has become active by default. If I wanted to switch to a different available set of audio gear, I could do it here, but no reason to. Go home. And at this point, I can create a session. We hadn't planned on doing this, but one of my friends is online who I think is in this meeting, and that's Susie. So if I start a session on my own, I generally start as a private session, which means it's just for me to test my gear. And then if I want to invite Susie to play, I'll click invite, choose all of it. It'll give me a list of all my friends. Before you can do this, you have to email your friends, and you can email them right from this user interface here. Let me just show you that step. If you go to your friends, mouse pad is acting up. If I go to my friends and oh, it's because I've got a Zoom window sitting on top of that. Okay. I go to my friends, there's a thing at the bottom where you can invite more friends, and you can just put in their email address and it will send them an email. So you can tell your friends to expect that.
You can just click on invite musicians. Right.
I'm sorry? Oh, are you on now? Okay.
No, I'm just saying you can.
Oh, that's true. I can't invite you even though you're not on. And then, so if I invite Susan, she's not on. Find her name. I could have typed her in also. If I invite Susan and she's not on, then she'll get an email message, I believe. And then when she is on, she is able to join the session. And then again, we're not really doing this live because we're all using our audio equipment for Zoom, but as you add more people to your session, they're going to show up here. You'll see another box for every person. And some interesting things you can do. Actually, yeah, it would be nice. We should have thought of this. It would be nice if we could add somebody to this session, but I don't want to mess up anybody's Zoom audio. One of the things you can do is if you hover over this dot, this is just showing you your own statistics. So my own CPU usage, my own latency within my audio system, input and output jitter within my audio system, and which driver I'm using. If you have other people in your session and you hover over their green dot, then you'll see your latency between yourself and that other person. So you can see, any two people can see the latency between themselves. You can also see what type of audio driver they are using. You can see what their equipment latency and equipment jitter is, and you can see the network jitter between your system and theirs, going over whatever network connection happens to be between the two of you. So there's some interesting stuff you can see. One important thing is how you can adjust somebody else's volume. You can adjust your own volume over here. So this is going to adjust what I hear in my own ears. It's not going to affect anybody else.
No, that's not true, actually, Val. That over there, it affects everyone. It's only in the middle.
This one affects everyone, but it also points out that the gain knob on your interface will also affect everyone, which is most likely what you're going to do to adjust the input volume going into your system.
Yeah, I normally leave this control at 0 decibels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The one to play with is the one under personal mix.
Right. Because your audio interface, or if you're using your built-in sound, then your Windows audio settings, there's that little, or your Mac audio settings, whichever computer you're using. So on the computer itself, you can adjust the audio input and output volume. So you'll want to use those. But then what happens when you're playing with other people is you can't really anticipate what their volume is going to be in your ears. And so each person's little display is going to have a volume slider. Again, I've got my own set to 0, but when I'm playing with Mike and Susan and our fourth person, then I've got them all set at different levels. And usually we'll play up through the first double bar and then take a pause to readjust our audio settings because somebody's mic may be in a different position from the last time we played together.
Val, could you also show the pan control?
Yeah. So you can put somebody in your left ear or your right ear, anywhere you'd like them.
Yeah, as a violinist, I like to put myself at 25% left, so in the stereo field, it's about the same place as my actual instrument is.
That's a good detail. We should also show people how to turn off the dynamic range compression.
Yes.
Which is not obvious.
And I just want everyone to know that all the things that Val is describing in this demo are all in those help pages. And after we do the demo, I'll just show you where they all are, so you'll see.
Plus, they're always rearranging these menus as they do further development. So I don't know how frequently Susan updates the help pages, but
whenever something changes.
I know this has changed. So it's the audio frame size booster menu. No, it's not.
Streaming console.
In the mixer,
Audio streaming console.
The audio streaming console. Okay, it's been a while
Those
since I
first
looked
two
at this,
items
yeah.
actually go to the same dialogue.
Mhm, yeah.
Another GUI blooper.
Uh-huh. Oh, and since I don't have anybody else in my session, it's a little hard to tell, but for you will see, once everybody's in the session, you will see a separate VU meter for each person. This little box that says comp is checked by default. What that tells you is that JamKazam is compressing the dynamic range of the audio to make the loud softer and the softs louder, which as classical musicians, we generally don't want that. We want to play forte and piano, so we want to turn off that compression. If you, let me go ahead and turn it on so you can see what, well, I'll just click reset to defaults. And if you check that box, it pops up this window again. You want to check bypass compressor. And then you can close this window and then the box will remain unchecked. You have to do that for each of your friends the first time you play a session with them, but then it will remember that setting for that person. Anything else we want to see while we're here?
Would you like to show us the video window? And the other thing is, Lucy's been asking questions about how to broadcast. I wonder if
we've only done this once, so I'm not sure I remember everything, but maybe collectively we can remember. So when you're in broadcast mode, as Mike said, you have to have another person who's not a performer in the session. And so then each person in the session becomes either a performer or a broadcaster. So one person has to take that broadcaster role. Did they have the performer and broadcaster option before? I don't remember.
They did.
Okay.
But we didn't use it. David,
Right.
our MC, was the broadcaster and we were all performers.
When we were all performers, yeah. And then you can select which webcam to use if you have more than one camera. And then we also had to turn our cameras on into, if you're in jamming, you can see each other. If you're in performing mode, then you can't actually see your own video. So you use jamming just to test out the video. I forget which setting we used here. Did we use small?
I don't remember that. But normally, if you were just doing video, in a normal session where you weren't broadcasting, and you turn on the video camera.
Right, it's in video settings.
On top of the.
I think you just do the video console, yeah. And you can choose a screen layout here, which isn't going to be very interesting since I've only got me in this session.
Yeah, and then just click on the video button.
Video button, yeah, we use this so rarely, and I have to admit we're not experts on broadcasting because we were handheld through that process by David from JamKazam, so we're not experts, but hopefully that kind of gives you an idea. So there's my video. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You
So
can. There's a recording feature. We've had some luck with the recording because yeah, that's nice. You can record your session and then play it back if you want to hear what it sounds like. Mike is asking JamKazam Windows and Mac, but not Linux. That's correct. There is no Linux option for JamKazam.
There is a Linux client, but it's not really supported, and it sort of works, but I don't know of anyone regularly using it yet.
Yeah. So something else, let me leave this session. So when you're done, you can leave the session. Usually leaves more quickly than that. It always asks you to rate the session. Well, this went fine for my purposes, so I'll just put the thumbs up and you can type in some feedback if you'd like, or you can ignore that and not now. But other things you can do from the main screen. Sorry, Mike, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say that a reason it could be slow is because there's Zoom up. It's generally, don't try to use Zoom and JamKazam at the same time to have a session. You know, it's like, it's okay for like helping someone, but they will slow each other down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Possibly.
You really, in general, you don't want any other applications running when you're in JamKazam because it will take away CPU cycles that JamKazam needs for good real-time performance.
Okay. I'm running JamKazam on a different computer, which is why I keep staring up at the ceiling here. Yeah, that is a good point. When you go to create a session, you can see that Susan has already created a session for our next quartet rehearsal. It is possible to schedule a session and then everybody gets an email notification, but it's not mandatory. You can just agree on a time to meet and then just all get online and find each other when you're there. If you go to find a session, they also have the notion of open sessions. When you create a session, you have the option of making it wide open to anybody anybody who wants to drop in. Here, what I don't know why our quartet rehearsal doesn't show up on this screen, why I had to go to the create session window to find it, which is a little non-intuitive.
It's in upcoming.
But yeah, we can see upcoming.
Yeah, it should be in for me.
And that will generally come up with some stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why it's not in.
It's not obvious where these people are. I must say that's I find very nice about Jamulus is that you can see where everybody, or at least where the server is that everybody's using on a particular session. But sometimes they'll put like if they want to invite people from their local area, they'll give it a title like LA rock music session or something like that. So you know what it is. You can specify specific types of musicians that you're looking for. Here's somebody looking for all clarinets for a clarinet choir, for example. And then the other thing is if there are any open jams running right now, I think they'll show up here. So there's that. I only want to do one other thing here, which is to show you what it looks like to search for musicians. You can search for musicians. Well, by default, it will display them by latency. You can filter by genre. So when you set up your own profile, you can specify genres, and you can specify more than one. And then you can see who these people are. And if it knows your latency to that person, it will put it. In a lot of cases, it's unknown, possibly because these people have never actually joined. But it will show some. It will start showing some latency values at some point. I'm not going to dwell on this, but it's something you can play with. This you can also do on the website if you're not running the JamKazam application. That's about what I wanted to do here. Anybody think of anything else we want to show while we're here? Sorry. Same general issue as with Jamulus is that searching for people within the application only gets you so far, although I did find one interesting contact there. So it's better to use your other networks such as ACMP and such as the DCCOS webpage to find people to play with.
Yeah. Oh, one thing you could do is just to show people search, like if you know above friends.
Oh,
Yeah, if you know someone.
Okay.
If you know someone's name and you want to communicate with them, you can type their name there, their JamKazam name.
Oh, it's going to show me all the Susans on JamKazam. Okay, I've never actually tried that.
Yeah, I guess you need
It'll show you the first 10.
Yeah. So type an A after Susan so you can get me. But
all right.
But this is what you would do if you find in the ACMP directory or in the DCCM directory, and then did you put A after Susan?
I did. I thought I did.
Yeah. In order to, well, maybe you need more. I don't know. This interface is kind of buggy. Just type type.
Yeah, it's a work in progress.
But anyway, you would type the person's name here, so just type my whole name, and then you can then use the internal messaging thing. There you are.
Oh, okay. So I could.
So then, if you click on me, why don't you click on my?
It would help if I were using the right.
Yeah. So that's my profile, and then you could message me. See where it says message, and you could say, "Hi, I saw you in the directory. Would you like to play chamber music with me?"
Yes. In fact, here's a message that I sent you 2 months ago.
Yeah. So this is very useful in cases where you know someone's out there. You don't have their email, but you know they're on JamKazam, and then you can find them and contact them and organize something. I think I would also, maybe there's one more thing that we could show people, which is, this is about the worldwide plan. If you go to the upcoming sessions,
Oh, good idea. Yeah.
so these sessions, it's quite annoying that they're shown in kind of the reverse order that you would want to see them. So like the things that are farthest in the future are earlier in this list of things, but you don't have to go down too far to get to March 20th.
In fact, if I search for ACMP, is it going to find it?
Yeah, it will find it. Yeah. So everyone is encouraged to, maybe you didn't have to hit refresh.
Yeah, you do have
I'll
to click
try
through.
that. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So here are a couple of sessions that have already been set up for the worldwide plan.
Yay.
There's one that I set up, and it's one that David Pearl set up. And so we use that feature where you can specify the instruments that you're looking for, and then people can RSVP, and you can decide whether to let them in. I have to say that this person, Massimiliano La Marca, we're trying to get him out of this session. Still, that slot is not full, but some bugginess in this interface that you're supposed to be able to cancel your participation in a session, but we haven't figured out how to do it. So so this is good, and as more and more of these sessions are organized for the plan, you'll be able to find them in this part of the interface. Okay, so all right, now I'd just like to show you in the help pages just where all this stuff is, so that we will see that you can easily find it. So Stephanie can bring those back up. So then let's just go to next at the bottom. Okay, and so yeah, this is basically what we just told you, and we'll just scroll down and you can see, just keep scrolling, and you'll see all the stuff that you just saw. This is how you register your gear. Yeah, keep going. So you'll click on audio gear. Here's just what you saw Val do. Here's the thing where you select your input and output. It does the test. Yep, keep going. And the thing about the chat microphone. And keep going. And here's, yeah, just go through all the steps. And then this shows you how to get in your first session, how to start a session, and then you'll see, actually there's a picture here of what it looks like when there's, no, I guess it just has one person in the session. Okay, we'll keep going, scrolling. Okay, this shows you what it looks like if you have a chat microphone as well as a regular microphone, because when I did the screenshot, I had a chat microphone. And yeah, okay, so and then let's then go on to the next page. And the next page is about how to calibrate your audio, stuff you can do with the gain of your equipment versus the sliders in the session that you saw. So all that kind of stuff. It will show you how you can turn compression off. It will show you how you can change the frame size, why you might want to. So all these things that you just saw, you can come back here and it'll just seem like familiar territory to you because you've seen it before. There's the compression thing. Yeah, that's what Val just did. Showed you how to bypass the compressor. And then some advice about how you can get a good sound by looking at what's going on with the audio input slider and the placement of your microphone and all those kinds of things. And we can talk more about any of those things later if people have questions about them, but I just wanted to show you that it's all here. Let's continue to click ahead, just so you can see. And this will tell you about some things that can happen inside of a session when you start to play with other people and adjustments you can make. And I forget what else is in this section. Talks a bit about latency. There's some ideas about how to get less latency, and then what to do if you have latency and you need to deal with it. So, yeah. So there's just some suggestions. And yeah, then we can click to the next one. I'll show you what's on there. And the next one I think is about finding people. And so we've just shown you how to search, how to connect with people so they'll become your friends, all that kind of stuff. So we don't need to spend a lot of time here, but just to see that there are instructions and it shows you how to schedule a session. Yeah, so it's all there. And then we can just click to the last, after we scroll this. Yeah. And then there's some additional resources here. Yeah, so one thing that's new is the JamKazam knowledge base. That there are some useful articles there that weren't always there, but JamKazam has been trying to improve what they put out there. The forums, Val mentioned, so that's where people have asked questions and people are helping each other. This Facebook page is useful. It's mostly people in rock bands, and there's a lot of discussions about gear and stuff. But the people are good resources, and if you have a question about, someone has the same gear as you, if you message them, they will probably answer. And then other people have written things, so there's some links to that. And then those things that I mentioned, recently I put this entry-level setup for Apple users here, so this is a way to do it without, with just using the internal mic. And we probably should have one of these for Windows too, but I'll have to get my Windows experts to tell me what the screens would look like for that, so that I can put that in. And if we just go back to the top of the screen and click on Worldwide Play-In, just want to show you there's one more page here, which is that this is for people who are, I wanted to show the directory too, but people who are in the DCCOS directory, we're challenging you to create sessions, and they'll be posted here. And then, so the ones that you saw out there, they're part of this initiative to get some sessions happening. And now let's go down to the bottom and let's click on Home, because I want to just take you to the directory. Let's go down to Quick Directory Access, just so you can see this is the little directory that we put together, and these are all the people who have gotten listed in it. So it's nice, it's just useful because you can kind of see everyone very easily where they are. We ask for them where they are so that you can tell what the latency will be, and it's nice. It's a nice way at a glance to see who's out there. I don't want to discourage people from putting JamKazam in their ACMP profile. You should do that also. But for the ACMP search, you have to know a lot in order to search for people. At least this is my experience. And for this, you don't need to know very much. You can just sort of look down the list and see who's out there, and that might be helpful.
I have new feedback on the way to search the ACMP directory. Because someone sent me a note in the chat last week that when I did it, 20 people showed up, and when she did it, 3 people showed up. And I realized it's because the ACMP website, when you're logged in, which you need to be to use the directory, it knows your address. Whereas it doesn't know my address because it was never entered. So when you're searching, what you need to do is erase the zip code and whatever it has in the default address kind of area before you go to the keyword search and put JamKazam in. And then you will get everyone.
Were you going to show people how to do that?
I can show people how to do that. Yeah, maybe I should. Let me just open another. Oops, I don't know what I just did. Here we go. Here we go. This is the ACMP website. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to log out and I'm going to re-log in as my cat because she has an address. She's like a regular member. Now I'm going to log in. See, it's hard with the, there we go. Log in. And she's going to, oh, this guy, that's one of my cats. So test cases. Actually, ever want to play banjo? Finnegan is a banjo player, novice. Okay, so then you go to the Connect menu, find ACMP. Whoops, someone just dropped out. Find players ACMP. Whoops.
It's waiting.
There you go. There you go. And you see, it knows that Finnegan lives in the Bronx. So that's my zip code. So I have to erase that. You cannot do anything. There's always a country, and that's one of the flaws of our directory, which will be fixed in the next round of website design. So right now, let's just keep United States. And then I go to Advanced Find, click on that, and then keywords. And since we're talking about JamKazam, I'm going to put JamKazam in there. And then you click on Find Players. It's being slow. I don't know why it's being so slow. And then you will get a whole lot of people. Yeah, everyone that's added it. But if you forget to take your zip code out, you're only going to see who's in your geographic area. And that's one of the beauties of this is we can play now with people that are not in our geographic area. Good. So should I stop sharing, or Susan, would you like to show more of your guide?
Will you also show how to get in touch with the technology task force while you're here?
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah.
So that's in the Explore menu, and it's down here in the menu under Resources. You just click on Technology Task Force. And I've got everyone listed by program and also by whether they're comfortable with PCs or Mac. So we have here, you can see, we have everyone here, Valerie, Susan, Mike is in here too.
Both.
Both. Mike does both. I have a list of both. So yeah, so that's how you find it. And then basically you just reach out to those people by email and arrange either a phone call or an email session or a Zoom. Thank you for reminding. Good. Oh, and the other thing I want to show you actually on the home page now, this is something new. I realized we have so many, get back to the home page. There's now so many resources on playing online that I just made a new article here called Online Chamber Music Resources at a Glance. So you can go to this article and yeah, don't be intimidated by this.
Well, it looks just like my rig.
Flyers, all the things you need to play on JamKazam. But now I have links to all the articles, Susan's article, Susan's how-to guide, the one she's been demoing, the DCCM JamKazam directory, likewise for Jamulus, the article that I wrote, Mike Teets, Bruce and Tom's guide, a link to the video from last week, and I'm going to put the link to this video in here too. And then there's a new grant, so if you know anyone organizing chamber music workshops, we have a technology grant. So that everything here, including the members only things too, and I wrote instructions for how to search the directory. So if you ever forget, just go to this little article. That's good. So can I stop sharing, or do you want to keep sharing your thing?
I think so. Yes, we can always bring it back if people have questions.
Okay.
And I do want to say one thing about the DCCOS directory, which is that that's open to anyone in the world. They don't have to be a member of anything to be in it. So if they're not in ACMP or they're not in DCCOS, they might be there. And it's just, the reason for that directory was that when we started playing, it was really, really hard to find classical musicians on JamKazam. The JamKazam search thing, it was supposed to search by genre, a genre of music, but I could never get it to work. But maybe it does work now.
I think it's better now.
Yeah, so it was very hard to find people, and it seemed like that was one of the best things that we could do for people, was make it easier to find each other. So that was that. And then in order to get that directory, I had to write those help pages. So that's why the help pages exist. So yeah, maybe we should take questions now.
Yes, there's a lot of questions in the chat, and there's a couple people with their hands raised. Let's start with the hands raised first, because one of them, Marjorie, do you have a question? Marjorie, are you there?
She's
She needs
muted.
to unmute.
Oh, I have to ask her to unmute. If Marjorie's not there, we can move down to.
Oh, she's talking, but she's still muted.
Oh, she is? Marjorie, can you please unmute? I can't unmute people, unfortunately.
I'm unmuted.
Oh, there she is.
Yeah, no, I just got onto JamKazam for the first time last week. Played a duet for the first time in years. In a year. I'm an oboe player. I played with a flute playing friend, and it was just so exciting. Well, I'm just kind of, I haven't even begun to explore JamKazam. We just went with what we had instead of, fussing around with it. We're going to get more serious about it. So I'm happy to be here today.
It's great.
This is really helpful.
Good.
By myself to get onto JamKazam, and I've always fooled around with electronics, fortunately, since I had to do it all by Amazon and Sweetwater and goodness knows what. But I'm up and running, so it's pretty exciting.
I'd like to recommend that if you haven't used JamKazam before, you should follow this progression. First, make sure you hear yourself in a solo session. Second, have a duo, schedule duets with one of your friends to make sure you hear each other. Only then can you think about doing quartets or larger. I've seen, back in the early days of the pandemic, I saw quartets schedule sessions and it didn't work for them, so they gave up.
Oh, I won't give up, don't worry.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're just add one person at a time, and that's a steady path to success.
Yeah, good idea.
Just you can add one of us. We're all happy to have your first session with you.
Oh, great.
Or anybody on the task force. That's generally what happens.
So we have a question from Carolyn. Carolyn, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I've been using JamKazam for months, and it's generally very helpful. However, even today I ran into a situation where setup that's worked before and gone on today, and three people, we couldn't hear one person. So what is their debug? So we tried resync, we tried that person leaves and comes back, we all rebooted, and it didn't work. So any other suggestions?
I guess that's when you file a support ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are all the right things to try.
I do have to say one thing that we have to keep in mind is that David Wilson and JamKazam is based in Austin. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's some problems right now. I'm not sure if it's affected people because I haven't played on JamKazam recently, but it could be that there's also servers being affected by the power outages.
Yeah, I thought of that, although I had a session yesterday which worked fine. So
well, that's great.
If you've been using it for months as we have, then it's gotten steady. It's gotten steadily better, but it does flake out sometimes.
Okay, didn't know if there was anything I was missing.
That's great. We have a question from Andy Langowitz.
Yes, a quick question about the experience of playing with others. I'm picturing being in a quartet with our backs to each other so we can't look at each other and imagining that. But I'm also, in that foray, you guys were doing pits pretty well together. Did you have to anticipate in order to accomplish that, to compensate for the latency, or did it just happen?
Yeah, I do play on the front side of the beat. I look at my total latency to appear and use that as an estimate of how far ahead of what I hear from them I should play. So if I have 20 millisecond latency to Val, I should try to play 20 milliseconds ahead of what I hear from her.
Right. I think we all try to do that to some degree. It becomes kind of second nature once you've done it a lot.
Yeah, another term I used to describe that is leaning forward.
Yeah, there is a natural tendency for tempo to slow down for exactly that reason, that everybody's waiting for everybody else. So yeah, you do have to work to overcome that. And then you have to develop little tricks. Since you can't see, we do a lot of sniffing to cue.
Yeah, and then some things that you would just be able to see, we'd have to talk about them, like bowings and that kind of thing.
Or if we're just practicing, then somebody will count in, like always. But yeah, to get ready for performance, we worked on sniffing. And we pretty much didn't work on bowing.
Yeah, not much.
Really, right.
There were some bowing issues in our JamKazam festival program. Our first and last pieces were new compositions by DC area composers, and we were actually engaged to record those in a studio in December, and that was the first time we had met in person to play those. As it turns out, our tempos in that session were faster than they'd been on JamKazam. Sort of unintentionally, that's how it worked out.
So Janet Hoffman has a question. Oops, Janet, you're muted.
Yeah. I just unmuted, Steph. Okay, do you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Some very good advice. Thank you guys that are doing a real nice presentation. But I think for the basic novice of perhaps maybe many people on this tutorial, they might be sitting there scratching their head saying, gee, that's all great, it's all good. But now I'm going to order an external interface. Not everybody has a Mac that has the internal situation where you don't necessarily need an external interface. But for those of us who have laptops, you have PCs, you're going to need to buy an external interface. You're going to say, what is that? What does it look like? I think that Susan or one of you showed it's a little red box. It's either the Focusrite, which is recommend. Well, I have the Focusrite Solo. There is really not much difference from the Solo or the 2i2 or i2i, whatever it's called, except it has more ports for more external amps. But there are gizmos and buttons and knobs on that interface, which I know when I first started, I said, what do I do with this? What is this all about? I can play my instruments, but I don't know what the hell I'm doing with this thing. So with much tutorial from friends of ours, and one woman particularly on here, thank you, Lucy Lee, who was a great help for me way back at the beginning with this, and others, the interface, if somebody could just show the interface and maybe explain, there's a knob, there's something called a gain. People don't know what a gain is. They turn the gain up, you're going to blast somebody out at the other end of your headphones. They need to know that there are ports there. Unless you're putting in an electronic instrument, you don't need to put a port in. You need to put your headphone and your mic in there, and you need to work with a gain. And what is a gain? I think this would be informative for people who don't really know anything about this.
Right, and I don't think we want to get too in the weeds on this program, but we can do some basics.
But I just
and
think
then,
just
again,
as an
anybody on the task force can try to help. So yeah, do I have this right side up? Yeah. So this is where my microphone plugs in. And this is where I could alternately plug in, there's a regular 1/4-inch jack, which is what you would use if you had an electric instrument like an electric guitar, it would go in there. But I've got a physical microphone, so it goes in here. Each one has a separate gain knob. That adjusts the volume of the sound that's coming into your device. And then the headphone plugs in here, and there's a separate knob for adjusting my headphone volume. And there is a button that says 48 volt. Most of the microphones that you'll get, again, not to get too in the weeds, but a common recommendation is to get what's called a condenser mic, which requires external power to the microphone. And that power is provided through this interface, but you have to touch that 48 volt button. It'll say, it may be labeled different things, but
if you have a dynamic microphone, you should not use the 48 volts.
Correct, yeah, because you can damage the mic. And again, if you talk through this, if you're buying gear, again, either somebody at Sweetwater or somebody at your local guitarist store can talk you through making sure you know what kind of mic you have and whether to turn that button on and off. So I'd recommend if you're totally new to this stuff, work with a dealer who can help you through this. And they're dealing with a lot of novices these days because all of us and all the rock musicians on the internet that are just learning how to use this kind of gear. I think the people that sell the gear are used to dealing with novice questions. There's one more thing worth mentioning, which is there's a direct monitor button. This means that the sound that goes into your interface is immediately going to come back out into your ears, and that's not what you want. You want to hear that sound as it is going into the session and then coming back to you from the network, so you'll hear that sound more close to what other people are hearing.
Yeah, so like when we were showing the gear registration thing, when you get to step 5, where it says turn direct monitoring off, and you need to keep that tone. So that will tell you whether you have the button in the right position or the knob, so that you've turned direct monitoring off.
Yeah.
Some interface boxes have a knob instead of a button. Read your user manual to figure out the details.
And there's just a word on headsets. Most people use like what Mike has on, a pair of over-the-ear headphones. I see a lot of cellists using those too. Personally, just my seating position is such that the ear things bump into my pegs, so I prefer to use earbuds. This is a high-quality set of earbuds. They have a little hook that goes over the ear, so they're very stable. They're made by Sennheiser, which is a high-end audio vendor. They cost a little over $100, and so that's what I use.
If you have a doubt about whether your microphone needs the 48-volt or phantom power button, probably the safest way is to assume it doesn't. Do not press that button, test your mic, and if no sound comes out, then you press that button, and that means your mic needs phantom power. I found that out the hard way. I made a whole recording with my partner without pressing that button. Yeah. So we have another question from Selma Joselle. Selma, are you there? Oh, you're muted, Selma, as well.
Unmuting.
There,
yeah,
good.
I'm unmuted. I have a couple of questions. First of all, in that audio console where we were adjusting the audio and turning off the comp button, every now and again, my name will appear twice, or one of the other players I'm playing with will have 2 columns. Why is that? And do we need to get rid of one? How does that impact anything?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about.
It's in the, manage.
Create it. Oh, you mean, in that manage screen?
Yeah, it's manage the audio and then the audio. Yeah. Okay.
So this window.
Every now and again, my name will be in 2 different columns, or someone I'm playing with will be in 2 different columns. Why is that, since we've only made 1 entry into the session?
I don't know. Do you also see them twice in the session itself if you go into a session with them?
No.
Okay.
I think what might be happening there is the one that says audio input is your main microphone. If you've got a chat microphone enabled, there will be a column for that. If in the frame size and booster dialog you've enabled a media stream, there might be another column for that.
I think, Mike, most of us are doing this very simply. I'm on a Mac, and I just have the Ethernet and the headphones connected. And I think that the others I'm playing with have similar gear. So we were at we just didn't know why this was happening and whether it would impact anything. It didn't seem to, but it was disconcerting.
It's okay to ignore it. The ones to pay attention to are the audio input and the peer music streams.
Okay. And then I had another question. How does jitter impact latency, if at all?
It does have an impact. To deal with the jitter, what JamKazam and similar programs all do is to make a jitter buffer or a jitter queue, so that if some packets take longer to go through than others, the buffer will absorb that and avoid dropouts. The more jitter there is, the longer that buffer has to be, so the more latency that's going to add.
Okay.
Yeah, so that there's the frame size is a thing that you can choose to be larger or smaller, and if you can choose it to be smaller and then not have degradation of the audio quality or more jitter, then you'll have less latency. But if you can't do that, then you have to make it bigger. So that corresponds to what Mike's talking about.
Okay. I was going to ask Val, I'm finding that sometimes the headphones are in the way of my violin. I don't play cello, but they get knocked around. What are these earbuds that they're also Sennheisers?
Yeah.
And they were,
I mean, you could use, I mean, you can even, so the computer itself or the interface will take a standard mini plug. Actually, my interface for the headphones, it takes a 1/4 inch plug, but so I got an adapter that lets me plug the mini plug into the 1/4 inch. So so these are the same kinds of earbuds you could use on your computer or your phone. You can use the El Cheapo earbuds if they've got a a plug that'll go into your interface, but I decided to get something with a little better sound quality.
okay, no, the little earbuds I find very uncomfortable, but I was wondering if the good ones that you're using would just help me be more comfortable.
Well, I think something I should have mentioned is that you do want noise isolating earbuds that actually they have one of those like rubbery thing that sits in your ear like an earplug. They're not so comfortable that I would wear them all day. I mean, after a couple hours, I can really tell I've had them in for a while. This came with 3 different sizes, and also it has rigid and floppy ones, so you can try different ones and see which one is most comfortable. Those all came with the earbuds.
Okay, well, thank you.
And I think someone might have put in the chat a question about using a pickup instead of a microphone. So I'll just on the topic of gear and it getting in the way. I think
We also have a
us
question about piano mics, like what kind of mics should you use in a piano? That was from Leon. And Leon also asked a question, which I think was answered earlier, potentially, but not directly, about using a Raspberry Pi. I think you can't use a Raspberry Pi because it's Linux, right? Is that correct? Or can you?
I think that is correct.
Yeah, Raspberry Pi is definitely Linux.
Yeah.
That's what I
Well,
believe can be used.
To put another layer on that, while there is an experimental Linux client, I think it's for an Intel CPU, and that's not what the Raspberry Pi has.
Yeah,
that could be a question to write JamKazam about, because he now has tech support. So I think if anyone's interested in doing that, you can write to the help desk, right? Is that correct?
You can write to the help desk if you are I guess if you're a gold member, you can write to the help desk, because that's one of the things that you get with gold membership is tech support. I think if you are not a gold member, they'll just direct you to the forums or the compendium of articles.
Yes.
Yeah. So piano mics. Well, I mean, that's like, you could probably teach a course on how to mic a piano. It's quite complicated because there's so much piano, and there also is a kind of a matter of taste of, what you like. I don't know. I mean, I ended up getting sort of fancy mics because I watched a video on YouTube where they compared a lot of mics, and I decided I like these Rode NT5 mics. But I wouldn't tell everyone to go out and buy them. I mean, the thing with the piano is, in order to get a real piano sound, it can be helpful to have more than one mic so that you can get more of a sense of the sound that's coming right out of the piano, and then the sound that is in the room. That seems to give it a more natural sound if you can do that. But I would say watch videos and talk to the people. I don't even know if the people in the stores really know but maybe some of them do know. Some of them are used to dealing with electronic, instruments, and they don't know exactly how to mic acoustic instruments. But if you get someone who's really knowledgeable about that stuff, then they could probably give you some advice. Then once you have the mics, then it's kind of like you try placing them in different places. It can make a very big difference, if you just have something, if you just move something an inch, because it's just kind of the sweet spot of the instrument and the microphone. It's definitely an art that I am just learning. But I'm happier with the mics I have now than what I had before, which was just one mic that I could only stick in one place. That was trying to do the best I could with just having one position for it. I don't know if that's helpful at all.
You can test your sound in JamKazam by recording yourself in a private solo session too, right? Does that give an accurate picture of the people are going to hear, do you think?
Yes.
It does. So that's probably a very good thing to do once you're first starting. Go, as Val demonstrated, go create a private solo session so nobody can hear you or see you, and hit record and just try a bunch of things and play back until you're kind of happy with it. And then, as Mike said, test on a duo session. Don't invite 12 people, just make a duo session and see how you get on.
Yeah, I should mention that recording is another one of those features that now you have to pay for. I think you have to have at least a silver membership to get recording.
We have some questions in the chat about well, one of them is from Mike Teets it's more about latency and distances from players. Can JamKazam handle, and another person, I'm forgetting now who was earlier in the chat, was asking if you had a group with 4 different people in it and 3 were sort of geographically close and 1 was not. Would that person have more problems? Oh, Mike can speak to that.
Yes, I actually have some JamKazam buddies in Seattle, and I'm the far one. The other 3 are all in the Seattle area, and my latency to them is on the order of 50 or 60 milliseconds. The relay servers that JamKazam put up last summer help with that. But I think the way they cope with it is maybe they make a larger latency allowance for me than they do to each other. So maybe they play 50 milliseconds ahead of me and only 20 milliseconds ahead of their local peers. But yeah, we make it work.
And someone's, I think it's Mike was asking about whether or not you could play with people in Europe. And I have heard that Suzanne Epstein is playing with Joachim Landkammer in Germany. So that's a DC Germany connection. Has anyone of you tried to play with people across the ocean?
I tried and didn't have such a good experience, but that was before I got my interface box. Maybe I should try it again.
Yeah. Other questions I see here. There are a few questions, you might have just answered them, but there are a few questions about the bit rate, what bit rate means, and you just demonstrated how to control it on the JamKazam platform. Do you want to speak a little bit more about, for example, the bit rate settings are default, there's default settings in JamKazam. When would be the moment to go in and adjust it yourself, and what kind of things would you adjust it for?
Well, if Val could go to the audio frame size and booster dialog. Okay, on the left side of this dialog, there's a row of radio buttons, 128 kbit per second. The one that's selected is 256 kbit per second. That's, well, how many bits per second you are sending over the net in audio data. 256, I think, is the maximum on the gold plan. 128 is the maximum on the free plan. But if you were in a situation where your upload capacity wasn't so great, you might send a lower bit rate so that you can send audio streams to more people. I don't know if she's on this call now, but I encountered someone named Harriet in Massachusetts who was on a DSL connection when she was getting started, and she could play duets just fine. But if she tried playing quartets, it was a disaster because the sum of the 3 audio streams she was trying to send to her peers exceeded her upload capacity. She ended up upgrading her internet service. But one way to cope with a situation like that is to send a lower bit rate, or even on the right side, a network packet rate. You could try sending fewer packets per second for less overhead.
Where is that?
Uncheck auto throttle
Turn off
packet
the auto
rate, and you
throttle
can
to
choose
be able to set that.
and you can choose 200 packets per second instead of 400.
Yeah.
And
I remember, Mike, you mentioned when we had the large session on New Year's Eve on
yes,
JamKazam, you told me to set the bit rate to 128 because there were so many people.
yes. And on the network packet rate, there's a checkbox at the bottom, large group auto throttle, or large group throttle packet rate. That's a good idea to check anyway.
Another concern with a large group, though, is the more people you have, the more CPU JamKazam is going to need to use. Because when I started using it, I had an older laptop, like a 10-year-old laptop that still had a Pentium processor on it. And with 4 people in it, it was really struggling. And that's, I think, why one of the parameters that you can view while you've got a session going is how much CPU JamKazam is using.
So I think normally JamKazam defaults to that auto throttle bit rate being checked, and we recently unchecked it because we found that our sound sounded a little dull. I don't know. So we got rid of it and just had the 256 kilobits checked, and we liked it better. But I don't think we've done enough experiments to be able to tell everyone that that's a good thing to do. So normally, though, JamKazam decides what bit rate it thinks is best, and if you have auto throttled bit rate checked, that's what it will do.
There was a question in the chat as to whether or not that will reduce your audio quality, and it looks like someone has said it will. Yeah.
Well, it's in the days of ripping CDs to MP3 files. You can encode it at 320 kbits per second. It'll be a cleaner, more pristine sound than if you encode it at 128 kbits per second. Same deal sending audio over the network. It's a different codec, but you still have the same bandwidth and fidelity trade-off. The higher bit, you can send a higher bit rate, it consumes more bandwidth, but you get a better sound quality. Lower bit rate, you're trading off a little sound quality, but using less network capacity.
Excellent. Do we have other questions in the chat that are not yet answered?
I had a question.
Yes.
Oh,
that's Tom.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
It's about robustness. I never used JamKazam, but I've used Jamulus and had probably quite a few dozen sessions by now over the last few months, and some of them really were kind of flaky and they didn't sound terribly good, but they all kind of worked. And I never had a session that totally, fingers crossed, like just crashed and burned and was impossible, I don't think. How is it with JamKazam? Does it basically like work all the time, even if it doesn't work well, or are there some sessions that just totally crash and burn and you're not able to do anything?
Pretty much always works. Pretty much always. I don't know if we've probably had, 50.
It's been a long time since we had to give up on a session.
Like
maybe in the middle of last summer, I don't know with this group, but maybe with another group that I play in, we've had days where we just had to give up, but that has not happened in a long time.
Well, I wouldn't put it quite so optimistically. Sometimes, for various reasons, sometimes it's JamKazam's fault. Often it isn't. But yes, somebody will have one player won't be able to hear one other player, and they try everything and it just doesn't work that day. So yeah, that does happen occasionally. My sense is that Jamulus is a little more reliable that way. But that's not to say that JamKazam is unreliable. Most of the time we do have a good session.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I mean, the audio quality is usually really quite good, and the latency is, you know, quite good. I mean, I have had very few bad sessions in all the sessions I've been playing. I think I feel comfortable telling people that it's really a good thing. I feel like it's a little bit like people who are, you know, are saying all these things about the vaccines might not be entirely effective, so should we even get them? You know, this is I think this is a bit like that. It's, you know, it works like 95% of the time. It works very well. So you know, I think we can.
It's not going to bring us back to normal, but yes.
Perfect.
And I
To see
will
me.
say, I want to make one comment, which is that I found this to be better than when I was playing outdoors at social distance, you know, when you're 10 feet from another person, especially with a chin string instrument that's right under your ear, because I play viola in a folk band, and I found that I couldn't hear the fiddler when he was 10 feet away because I had the viola under my ear, and you don't have that problem in a session because you can adjust everybody's volume the way you like it.
Susan, could you please repeat the name of the mic that you use for your piano?
It's by Rode. It's a company called Rode, R-O-D-E. They're in Australia. And I'm pretty sure I have an NT5 mics. I have a matched pair of mics. Let me just check that for sure.
I think that the violinist in our piano quartet uses the same model, but only one of them.
Yeah.
We had a question also about the mics the string players were using. I think Adwin Lim had put something in the chat. So while Susan's getting hers, do you want to tell us what kind of mics you chose to use?
Well, I was curious about, I did what Mike did, you know, you first try by yourself and then you try it with the duet. So now we're reaching out to thinking about playing piano quartets. And I was sort of curious, like, since I play both string instruments and piano, and maybe Susan will address this, exactly what sort of mics should I use for my piano, and how does that, you know, I tried sonatas with piano and violin, and that works fine, but now, you know, we're incorporating more instruments, and I wasn't too sure exactly, you know, what sort of sound equipment I should have for my piano when I'm playing piano.
Well, I would speculate that if you put a microphone inside the piano, you might want an omnidirectional one. What are your thoughts on that, Susan?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's funny. People like for like pop piano, you will often see them put the microphone right inside of the piano. It gives a very accurate sound, but it's not the sound that we're used to hearing a piano make. So I think that putting it right inside the piano is not, if you only have one mic, I wouldn't suggest putting it right inside the piano. I would suggest putting it to the side of the piano, you know, maybe 18 inches up, something like that. You have to move it around, but, you know, so you're trying to get, what you would be doing there if you have one mic is you're trying to kind of get a combination of the sound that's coming right out of the piano and the sound that's coming off of the lid, which is going to reflect some sound into the room. So you're getting some room sound and some piano sound.
That's another question I had is in terms of the lid, I was thinking, should I just have it completely off instead of utilizing it?
Well, I mean, it's actually useful for directing the sound into the room. Yeah. But, you know, I do suggest there are a lot of videos you can watch on YouTube, and you'll hear different sounds, you know, and you have to decide what sound you like. If you want like a really crisp sound, it's kind of like, you know, do you like the Yamaha pianos, or do you like the Steinway kind of rich, you have to dig to get the sound out of the piano. So it's like, it is a matter of taste, what you want your piano to sound like. And so that's going to affect what microphone and where you put the microphone.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any more questions that haven't been answered? No.
T5, yes.
I was interested to see a comment, a recommendation in the chat for a set of noise canceling headphones. I have tried the, I have headphones with active noise canceling in them, and I think they sounded very strange, but because it seems to me you wouldn't want that, because you don't want to be canceling out the sound of your instrument from the room at the same time as you're trying to hear the same sound through your ears, and the noise cancellation is going to be a little out of phase with what's coming into your ear. So I think the active noise cancellation might not be desirable in this setting, but again, that's just my experience.
I suspect that would also add a little latency.
We have a question about microphone stands for piano.
Definitely get like boom type stands so that you can play around with the height of the microphone, and that's definitely worth it. They're not that expensive. Come on, Mochi.
There are a couple more questions about the ACMP directory. I did show it. I showed you how to search it. I didn't specify how to get yourself searchable in it. So currently, until we have our new website, your best option is to go into the two fields that have the most possibility for editing. One of them is a field that asks you what type of music you like to play, and the other is a field that asks what you're looking for. So if you put the word JamKazam or Jamulus or any other program you're using in there, people will be able to find you. Do we have any more questions, or should we wrap up today's session?
Yes, I have one. Hear me?
Yes.
You do? Okay. Well, this might go back to an earlier question, and I discussed with Mike many times. I'm in Miami, and the people that I play with are in the north. The latency is that they're always telling me to play ahead of the beat. If I play ahead of the beat, I'm rushing. Then I'm waiting for them to play the first beat of the measure that I'm already ahead in. So then I'm behind. And it's like this seesaw. I'm up and I'm down, I'm up and I'm down.
Don't wait.
Split the difference.
But does anybody else find this? And how, I mean, I'm frustrated. It's becoming way too frustrated to play a simple quartet.
Try to find some peers who are closer to you. I mean,
yeah.
Is that the reason this is happening? Because I'm so far away?
There's going to be some network latency going from Florida to, say, New England, no matter what you do. And there's less between Florida and Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not anybody's playing that's causing this. It's this latency that's the issue.
Yes.
Yeah, and then, you know, you do need to not wait for people. I mean, that's another thing. You may just be too far away from these people, but in general, a way to cope with latency is you have the tempo in your head, you know, and you play at that tempo, and you don't wait for people to come in. You know, you have to be kind of anticipating what's going to be happening. But you know, there's only a certain amount of that you can do. So if you just have too much latency, it just may be impossible.
Well, in a sense, it's a little bit like playing rubato with an accompaniment that's at a constant tempo, except you're always ahead of them by just that fraction of a beat.
And of course, with four of us, everybody has their own idea where they are. So
It's a skill that you have to learn. It doesn't come naturally to anybody.
well, it's not, it's so unnatural because you're not taught to play ahead of the beat and you're not
Right.
taught to play behind the beat.
Right.
Yeah.
And then what you hear, what you're going to hear then is not what you want to hear. You're going to sound like you're playing ahead of everybody else, but
right.
You know.
And if you're doing it right, they will hear themselves ahead of you by the same amount.
Yeah.
Is this something you could fix with the bit rates, Mike? Is, for example, if you're in Florida and your other friends are in the Northeast, could you change your bit rate, which would make your quality a little less, but make you less latent?
I don't think that would have that kind of effect. I think latency and bit rate are two different, almost orthogonal dimensions of network performance.
Okay. There's really nothing you can do about it.
One is not really related to the other.
Having said that, though, Jill, I've done a number of orchestra concerts where that happens. Like Susan mentioned earlier, this kind of latency thing is completely frustrating, but especially since COVID, I've been doing socially distanced concerts where we're all 6 feet apart and I'm like 25 feet away from the concert mistress. And it's the same kind of thing. They're always telling one group of people that they're dragging. You feel like you're rushing. You know, it's probably what people that play in the horn section of an orchestra feel every day of their life.
I was to say, yeah, percussionists have to consciously use this skill.
Yeah.
It's tricky though. And there is, I don't like it personally, but there is a metronome built in to JamKazam.
We've used it, yeah. And that does
help?
It helps. Does everybody hear that metronome at the same rate?
That's an interesting question. They've actually put it in a patent application. They have sort of a network synchronized metronome. So everybody has their own metronome that operates independently, but they talk to each other so that they try to stay in sync in spite of the network latency. Computers for many years now have used a similar network time protocol to synchronize clocks, and the metronome is just doing that at trying to do it on a shorter time scale.
We have a question from Janet Hoffman.
Muted. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, no, it's not a question. Just another comment about the latency issue, which those of us who've been playing on JamKazam have definitely experienced. And sometimes I get thrown off with people that are playing very close to me, and absolutely no problem with somebody playing in Florida or in California or in Kentucky. So I don't think that we can just quantify this and say it's because of the distance. That's not always the reason why we're having these issues. And you know, I don't think that people should feel that they can't try to reach out to people, you know, 700 or 2,000 miles away. You have to try, and then maybe it's the buffering on the internal dynamics of your own audio interface or somebody else's audio interface, and you play around with that stuff. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you throw it up to the gods and just hope that it'll work. But again, it's not just because you're so many miles away. So that woman, I forgot, somebody from Florida made a comment about she, you know, trying to play with the folks up north where we are. It's not just because you're in Florida and we're in New York or whatever. There's more to it. There's more to it.
It's one of several factors.
Yeah, but the thing is, there's going to be more latency the farther away. If everything else is kept the same, if you have the same equipment, people who are farther away from you, you will have more latency with them. Now, it could be that these issues that the Florida person is experiencing are a combination of the distance and someone's equipment being very slow.
Right.
So that's the thing to do is I mean, I would say check your interface latency and see if there's any way you can bring that down, and make sure there's nothing, you know, wireless in your setup by mistake or something like that.
But Janet has a good point. You know, network latency is correlated with distance, but it's not a perfect correlation. Yeah. Like I have pretty good latency from DC to someone in Philadelphia. We just happen to have the same network service provider, so it has fewer hops to get between us. On the other hand, there are some DC people that I have unfortunately high latency to because, well, part one is on a different internet service provider. I think another one has a slow computer.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a question as well from Selma Joselle. Selma, are you there?
Yeah, I had to unmute it. Wasn't going off. One of the things that I noticed when you were scrolling through the frequently asked questions was that you should turn off anything that's wireless in the vicinity to improve the latency. So does that mean turn off your cell phone and make sure that your husband's or your spouse's wireless devices aren't nearby? Or does that relate, let's say, to the whole house or just adjacent to where you are?
Well, it can. Anyone who's using your internet can slow things down. So
okay, so I have to.
yeah.
Although that's not necessarily a factor of whether it's wireless or not.
Yeah.
I think the main thing is to make sure there's no wireless component between your instrument and your ears and the internet.
Okay.
In other words, don't use Wi-Fi, don't use Bluetooth microphones.
And ask your housemates to wait till you're done with JamKazam to play their video games.
Definitely.
Unlike your cell phone, if it's using cellular, the cell service, it's not going to be interfering with your JamKazam. But if it's using your Wi-Fi, for data and it's updating some app or something, then it can be sucking bandwidth away from from what you'd like to be using for yourself. So it's a thing.
It depends though, because my husband is usually Skyping at the same time that we're having our session. So it may or may not make a difference.
It may or may not. It probably depends how fast your connection is and all that sort of stuff.
You can probably set your router to prioritize your own traffic. And also my new laptop has something, it's designed for gaming, and it will actually let you set individual applications to prioritize use of the network. So if your computer has something like that, I think that would definitely be a good idea for JamKazam. So I turned it on.
And today, I think I played with somebody in Florida and in Vermont, and I'm in Massachusetts. And we had some issues, but I think that we all adjusted at some point, Jill. And we were able to get through a string trio, a Beethoven.
So it's possible that only 3 players is much easier than 4.
I have played quartets, but we're not as far distant in the quartets I've been playing. So I'm wondering if when I'm playing with people in Florida, if I should stay with trios and duets and not go up to quartets.
We could try and see what happens.
All right.
Yeah, I play somewhat regularly in a string quintet. I think Carolyn is here, and in that quintet, one person is in Long Island, and another person's in North Carolina, and we get by.
And the cellist is in Detroit.
That's right.
Yeah.
So when you say you get by, does that mean you have latency issues somewhat?
Yeah, there are some latency issues, but I think we've learned how to cope with them. And last week we got through Brahms Opus 111.
Wow.
Part of that coping is lowering your standards a little bit, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't
Maybe,
know.
maybe
to
not.
be clear, this is never going to be as good as playing the same.
No.
I don't think it's lowering standards. I think it's adjusting to what's available.
Well, I think you do have to grant yourself and your peers a little wider tolerance than you would, say, if you're preparing a live recital.
That's true, but by and large, it really works quite well, and it certainly is a very good substitute for not being able to play.
I wanted to say something, but my phone is ringing, but now it's finished. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of a question of expectations and what you're trying to get out of the session. And, sometimes it's just you want to play that piece with people. sometimes, like, you know, we're fortunate that we have good enough latency that we can work very seriously on a piece and, you know, get it to performance standard or get coached on it. I think you know, you just have to see what the context is of what you're, of, you know, who you're playing with and what you want to get from it, and you can you know, you can really enjoy it. I think as I think somewhere in the help pages it says, you know, it might not be perfect, but it might still be fun. So, you know, you just have to see if it's appropriate for the expectations that you have.
I do think we are going to continue even post-COVID. I think a lot of people that are into JamKazam and Jamulus and other low latency programs are going to continue enjoying this as a social activity.
Oh, yeah.
Because it is a really wonderful, even if it's not perfect, it's a wonderful way to meet musicians and play with musicians that you would otherwise have to pay, you know, 2 airline tickets if you're Val, your cello and yourself. You know, so I think it's gonna, and if you think David Wilson, I met him a couple times on Zoom. I did not know this, but he actually started out as a designer of gaming software. So if you think about this, this is basically, you know, this is an opportunity for all of us to be like a bunch of teenagers.
Yeah.
Secretly communicating with our friends over the internet in real time. And I think it will have lasting implications for all of us in a very positive way, not just for us for pleasure, but also in an educational context. So I highly recommend people to try it, even if we think the lockdowns are going to end soon, which we hope they will. It definitely is a fun activity.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions before we wrap up? I feel like it's starting to, we don't have any more in the chat. Looks like we have, I think we've answered everyone's questions about everything. Susan, Mike, and Val, thank you so much. And I also want to let you all know that all 3 of them are on our technology task force. So if you have any further questions, you can always email them, if you know, and or anyone else on that page. I really do hope some of you will consider playing and or organizing sessions on the Worldwide Play-In, because I think it's going to be a lot of fun, even if it's messy. I think it's going to be a lot of fun and a great way for people in ACMP to meet people from other areas that we wouldn't be able to meet with in-person events. So I just want to say thank you so much on behalf of ACMP to our 3 speakers and to all of you for being interested and coming to this event. And I really look forward to meeting and hearing you soon on JamKazam. Thank you.